Hello ladies and gents, I'm the Dapper Rat, and this is part 4 of balancing properties, so be sure to check out previous parts to gain a better understanding of what's going on. However, for those of you with little time, here's a summary. Essentially, I'm clarifying my ideas to balance heroes by putting them in roles that give them access to certain properties. These string of videos go over each property, where they belong, and track their strength in order to monitor how often they're used. That being said, let's resume where we left off.
Now moving on to Superior Block, a simple property that lets you block during an action, whether that be dodging or attacking, and often confirms damage, but not always. While in ganks, Superior Block has little effect, however it can be used to counter an external. In team fights, Superior Block becomes quite strong, as punishing your opponent's offense by using it against them is not only great, but has a very low risk of hitting your own teammate. In a duel, Superior Block can be extremely oppressive, and now it's not completely unbeatable, but it gives heroes a really safe way to counter most attacks. In an anti-gank, Superior Block shines rather well as a defensive move that doubles as offensive, is completely in line for an anti-ganker, landing Superior Block into the anti-ganker category. Next up is Traps. Unique to Nucia, traps are grossly unused in For Honor. This property punishes a character for blocking or parrying an attack. This is beautifully mischievous move, as it messes with a person's basic instinct of the game. In ganks, the property can reign supreme if it was more consistent. The range of traps are terrible and feed revenge even if they didn't connect. When not bugging, traps will destroy your opponent in a gank, and in a team fight, traps have little to no use, as most defense in a team fight is dodge reliant, which means you can't really use your traps. Moving into a duel, traps once again rise to the top, becoming a terrifying property to go against, causing people to second guess themselves. In an anti-gank, you can see a little use, however, like many properties, it does not fare well against very aggressive opponents. This lands traps in the ganker category, but due to its instability and low impact, I could see it being a duelist property no problem. Moving on to Unblockables. It's one of the most popular properties that forces your opponent to parry or dodge your attack. In gank, this property is very strong, as it forces your opponent to take a 50-50 chance on whether or not they're going to get hurt for a lot of damage. In a team fight, Unblockables work the same as well as in duels and in ganks. I mean, it's a 50-50 chance you either get hit or you don't. Universally, this property strength comes from how it's used to mess with your opponent. I mean, you force them to make a read. However, it's also very powerful in every situation, kind of like counters, but it does have more counterplay than counters does. So I'm gonna place Unblockables in the duelist property, and what this will do is it will likely give every person a benefit to ganking compared to anti-ganking, and that's because Unblockables are more powerful when you're ganking someone than if you're anti-ganking, although they're not terrible while anti-ganking. And so I feel like this might be just something that we have to deal with. Most of the other universal properties are relatively even across the board. This is the one where I just had to bite the bullet because I don't see Unblockables being in any other category without making a duel hell between players. Putting in the ganker sector essentially makes everybody that is not a ganker kind of an inferior duelist compared to them. That being said, we're moving on to Undodgeables. As the name implies, this property stops you from being able to dodge an attack. In a gank, this can see some use, but generally is useless, as most opponents will opt for a block or even parry you. Although, select heroes are more keen on dodging, so you can get some use there. In a team fight, you can see more use, since as stated before, dodging is a big part of team fights. Stopping the voluntary displacement of an enemy in a team fight is very strong. In a duel, this property only gains strength when your opponent is threatened by something else like a bash, which is notorious in the game, is getting annoying, but that's because it's oversaturated. Just every character is bash undodgeable, or is unblockable undodgeable, or some sort of mix-up where you either have to dodge or you have to parry. This lands Undodgeables into the teamfight category. Finally, we have variable timing. This property lets you change the timing of your attack up to a certain maximum. In ganks, this has a tiny bit of use, as messing with an opponent's perception can help. Moving to team fights, you can see an unusual use, as you are able to target swap multiple times, keeping your opponents on edge. get your mind out of the gutter. In a duel, this becomes much stronger as parries become less reliable, especially after learning general parry timings. In an anti-gank, you gain the same benefit as a team fight, but often putting opponents on edge and stopping them from attempting to attack you in case they need to defend. However, in larger groups, this property becomes weaker as you can't threaten everyone at the same time. This grants variable timing a spot in the duelist category. Since we're actually done with our placement, we can move on to balancing. Except we can't move on to balancing because I'm running severely behind schedule. So this video is going to become a two-parter because if I don't get this out by Saturday, I'm going to be banished to algorithm hell. That being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully the next video can be more structured. I was kind of cringing a bit editing this one. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Farewell, ladies and gents.